open with the sound of a heavy metallic clunk. Extreme close-up on a tactical watch on a man's wrist as his fist clenches. Quick cuts. A vault door, three grim-faced men in polo shirts crowding a hallway, the glint of a taser. They thought my safe was a violation. They thought I was an easy target. They invaded my home, threatened me, demanded the code. They had no idea their emergency inspection just triggered a veteran's last line of defense. HOA thugs trapped me. They had no idea. The rain wasn't weather. It was atmosphere, a curtain of sound to drown out sins. Michael Grant sat in the stillness of his living room, a book open but unread on his lap. The clock ticked past 11:45 p.m. The knock, when it came, wasn't polite. It was a declaration, three thunderous blows that shook the door in its frame. He didn't move. He'd been expecting them, just not this late, not this brazen. "Mr. Grant, HOA compliance, open up." The voice was Warren Higgs, president of the Cedar Ridge Homes Association, a man who treated homeowner covenants like holy writ and his own authority as divine right. Michael marked his page, set the book down. His movement was fluid, but the slight, deliberate pause as he put weight on his right leg was a calculated show of weakness, a tell for them to remember. He opened the door. Two men filled the space. Higgs with his perpetually tanned scalp and a smile that never reached his eyes. Beside him, Bruce, all thick neck and coiled aggression, a former rent-a-cop playing enforcer. A third man, younger, lingered on the porch steps, a silent lookout. "Evening," Michael said, his voice a low, neutral rumble. "It's a violation," Higgs stated, brushing past him into the foyer, water dripping on the hardwood. Bruce followed, crowding Michael back. "Article 14, unapproved secure installations, the vault." "It's in my private study." "It's a structural hazard," Bruce grunted, his eyes already scanning, inventorying. "You'll give us the code for inspection," Higgs said. It wasn't a request. "Now, or we commence immediate condemnation proceedings." The threat hung in the air, cheap and potent. Michael saw it then, the eager glint in Bruce's eye. This wasn't about codes or covenants. This was a shakedown. They knew about the army pension, the solitary life, the safe. They'd come for what was inside. The lookout on the porch closed the front door softly. The click of the latch was the loudest sound in the house. They were in, he was trapped. Bruce blocked the hallway to the bedrooms. Higgs stood between him and the kitchen. "The code," Higgs repeated, pulling a small, black taser from his jacket pocket. The prongs crackled with a sickly blue arc. "Or we find it ourselves." Michael held his hands up, palms out, a gesture of surrender. His tactical watch caught the light. His breathing remained steady, controlled, a soldier's breath. "Okay," Michael said, his tone shifting to weary defeat. "Okay, it's in the study, I'll show you." He turned, leading them down the short hallway, his limp slightly more pronounced. He stopped at the polished steel door of the vault, its digital keypad glowing softly. He raised a hand to input the code, then stopped. He looked over his shoulder at Higgs, his winter blue eyes now utterly flat. "You're right about one thing, Warren." "What's that?" Higgs sneered, taser ready. "This is a violation." Michael's hand didn't go to the keypad. Instead, his fingers brushed a nearly invisible seam in the wall beside the vault. A soft hiss echoed in the hallway. The lookout from the porch suddenly spoke, his voice tinny through a baby monitor on the hallway console. "Warren, a police cruiser just rolled past. Slow." Higgs's eyes flickered with doubt. "You called them?" "No," Michael said, a ghost of a smile on his lips. "But my security system did. The moment you crossed my threshold with a weapon, it also streams everything to a cloud server. Audio and video, your taser. That's assault with a deadly weapon, a felony." Bruce stepped forward, rage contorting his face. "You think a cop driving by scares us?" "The cop doesn't," Michael said, his voice dropping to a whisper. "But this does." From a hidden vent near the ceiling, a colorless, odorless gas began to silently fill the hallway. It was non-lethal, a military-grade incapacitant. Higgs coughed, his eyes widening as he felt a sudden heavy lethargy in his limbs. The taser slipped from his fingers, clattering to the floor. Bruce stumbled, grabbing at the wall. "What did you do?" Michael stood unaffected, watching them slump. He reached down and picked up the taser. "You came for my vault," Michael said, his voice cold as the steel door. "But you should have been worried about my home. This whole house is my vault." From the porch, the lookout's panicked voice crackled again. "Guys, the cruiser's stopping. It's turning around. It's coming back." Michael looked at the two disoriented men at his feet, then toward the front of the house where red and blue lights now strobed through the windows, painting the walls in pulses of emergency. He'd wanted them to call the police. It was part of the plan. But the other part, the part where they'd mentioned his wife's name, where they'd threatened to desecrate her memory room in the basement, that was personal. That wasn't in the plan. The police were at the door, but the real reckoning, Michael knew, was just beginning. The police knock was a sharp, official contrast to the HOA's thuggish pounding. Michael didn't move toward it. He watched Higgs and Bruce struggling against the chemical lethargy, their movements slow and uncoordinated, like men drowning in thick air. The taser felt cold and familiar in his hand. Not an army-issue tool, but the principle was the same: control the battlefield. "Don't answer," Higgs slurred, slumping against the vault door, his eyes pleading, a complete reversal. The predator was now prey, begging for cover. Bruce was on his knees, coughing dry heaves. "You poisoned us." "Non-lethal incapacitant," Michael corrected, his voice devoid of emotion. "Ventilated dispersion system. You'll be lucid in 10 minutes, just in time for your conversation with the police." The knocking turned into a shout. "Police, open the door." Michael looked from the hallway toward the front of the house. The plan had been simple: let them break the law, trap the evidence, let the law handle it. Clean, surgical. But then Higgs had mentioned Sarah's room. His late wife's sanctuary, the one place in this hollow house that still held her scent, her spirit. They had targeted it. They had used her memory as a lever. The clean plan was now ash. He made a decision. In one swift motion, he grabbed Higgs by the collar and Bruce by the arm. Their weight was substantial, but adrenaline and training made them manageable. He dragged them, not toward the front door, but away from it, down the hall past the vault, to a plain, locked door marked utility. "The basement," Bruce mumbled, confusion cutting through the haze. "No," Michael said, working a key into the lock. "The bunker." The door opened onto a steep, narrow staircase leading down into darkness. He shoved them onto the top step. They tumbled down with a series of pained grunts and thuds, coming to rest on a concrete floor below. Michael hit a switch. Harsh fluorescent lights flickered on, revealing a stark, unfinished space. It was a storm shelter reinforced to FEMA specs, and it was now their cell. He descended the steps, ignoring their groans. From a metal shelf, he retrieved 2 heavy-duty zip ties. With practiced efficiency, he secured their wrists behind their backs, looping the ties through a thick, anchored pipe running along the wall. "You can't do this," Higgs whimpered, his face pale. "You invaded my home," Michael said, kneeling to be at eye level. "You brought a weapon, you threatened me, and you spoke about my wife." His voice cracked on the last word, the first real emotion he'd shown. It was more terrifying than his calm. "The police outside, they'll get a story, but my interrogation happens first." Upstairs, the pounding was now accompanied by the sound of a radio. The officers were calling for backup. Michael walked to a metal cabinet, unlocked it, and pulled out a small, ruggedized laptop. He opened it, typed a command, and the wall across from the bound men lit up with a live grid of video feeds, every camera inside and outside his property. He pointed to the main feed, showing 2 uniformed officers at his front door, one speaking urgently into his shoulder mic. "They're deciding right now whether to force entry," Michael said. "But they have no probable cause, just a noise complaint from a neighbor who heard your initial knocking. My security feed, which I will gladly provide, shows you entering willingly. It shows you producing a taser. It shows me, a disabled veteran, retreating in fear down this hallway. The narrative is already written. He turned to face them fully, his silhouette framed by the glowing screens. Here is your only choice. You tell me everything, why you're really here, who else is involved, why you've been targeting veterans in this community. You give me names, dates, financial records. You give me the truth. He leaned in close, his voice a whisper that carried in the sterile room. Or I go upstairs, let the police in, show them the footage of your assault, and press every charge imaginable. While you're in county lockup, I will use every skill I learned in 15 years of Army intelligence to dismantle your lives, your finances, and your precious HOA empire. I will burn it all to the ground. Bruce snarled, "You're bluffing." Michael smiled. It didn't reach his eyes. He picked up the taser he'd taken from Higgs. This is set to its lowest setting, painful but not disabling. He pressed the trigger. The blue arc crackled viciously in the small space. I have 10 minutes before the police potentially breach my door. I am prepared to use every second of it to get answers. He took a step toward Bruce. But maybe I should start with the boss, see what he's made of. He turned the taser toward Higgs, whose bravado had completely dissolved into raw, trembling terror. The crackling arc of the taser cast jagged blue shadows across Warren Higgs's face. His eyes, wide with a primal fear, were fixed on the weapon. Bruce thrashed against his restraints, a guttural roar caught in his throat. "Wait, for God's sake, wait," Higgs screamed, the words tearing loose. "It's not about the safe, it's about the land." Michael's finger hovered over the trigger. The taser's angry hum was the only sound in the bunker. Upstairs, the police radio chatter was a muffled backdrop. "Talk fast." "Your corner lot," Higgs spat out, the confession coming in a desperate flood. "It's the largest in Cedar Ridge, the only one with direct access to the utility easement behind the properties. A developer needs that combined parcel for a new access road, for a luxury condo complex on the adjacent land." Michael didn't move. The pieces began to snap together with cold, brutal logic. "You've done this before," Michael stated, not asking. Higgs nodded miserably. "The Millers, the Garcias, you're the third. You were supposed to be the easiest, a single vet with a bad leg and a pension. We run up violations, levy fines you can't pay, force a foreclosure, and the HOA buys the property back for pennies to settle the debt. Then we sell it to the developer." Bruce had gone still, listening. A look of dawning horror spread across his features. He was muscle, not brains. He was just now understanding the full scope. "The emergency inspections," Michael prompted. "To pressure you, to plant violations, to find leverage." Higgs's eyes darted to the floor. "Your wife's room," Stephanie said. "A man guarding a memory is emotionally vulnerable. It was a pressure point." A white-hot fury surged through Michael, so intense it threatened to shatter his operational calm. He took a slow, deliberate breath, locking the emotion in a steel vault within. He needed the data. Names, the developer, the people on the HOA board in on it. Kellerman Properties, out of Nevada. The board, it's just me and the treasurer, Lisa Cho. She handles the financial side. The others are just window dressing. They don't know. On the video wall, a new feed lit up. A second police cruiser had arrived. An officer was walking the perimeter, shining a flashlight toward the basement windows. Windows Michael had long ago blacked out and reinforced. Time was evaporating. Michael stood, turning his back to them, processing. This was bigger than two thugs. It was a conspiracy. A systematic weaponization of petty authority for fraud and theft. He turned back, his expression now one of icy calculation. "You're going to call Lisa Cho? You're going to tell her the operation is compromised, that you're with me, and I've agreed to a quiet, private buyout to avoid scandal. You're going to tell her to bring all the financial records, the agreements with Kellerman Properties, everything. Here. Tonight." Higgs stared, uncomprehending. "She'll never." "She will," Michael interrupted. because you will sound terrified, and because you will say I have a digital copy of your full confession set to release to the county DA, the FBI, and every news outlet in the state if she isn't here in 45 minutes. He walked to the shelf, pulled out a cheap burner phone and tossed it into Higgs's lap. Make the call, stick to the script. One deviation, and I hand you both to the police as armed home invaders, and I burn your entire scheme to the ground from prison. With trembling, zip-tied hands, Higgs fumbled for the phone. He dialed, put it on speaker. It rang twice. Warren, it's late. Lisa Cho's voice was alert, crisp. Lisa, it's gone bad. Grant, he's not what we thought. He knows everything. What do you mean, everything? About the lots, about Kellerman. He has recordings. He's willing to deal, but only tonight. He wants the files, all of them. You need to bring them to his house. Now. Silence stretched on the line. Then suspicion, sharp as a blade, put him on. Michael leaned close to the phone. Ms. Cho, you have 43 minutes. Bring the truth or I broadcast their lies, your choice. He ended the call and took the phone. Bruce finally found his voice, low and shaken. And what happens to us after she comes? Michael looked at the video feed. The police were converging on their squad cars, seemingly preparing to leave. The noise complaint without further disturbance wasn't enough. That depends, Michael said, his eyes returning to the men, on whether the story you give me next matches the one in her files. He picked up the taser again. Now let's discuss the Henderson family. The gas leak that forced them out. Start talking. As Bruce began to stammer a denial, a new alert flashed silently on the laptop screen. An exterior camera facing the back alley. A dark, unmarked SUV with government plates had just rolled to a stop, its lights off. Two figures in plain clothes got out, moving with purposeful authority toward his back gate. They weren't police. The game had just changed again. The figures at the back gate didn't move like police. Their approach was synchronized, professional, cutting through shadows with economical precision. They bypassed the gate lock entirely. A soft click from a pickset echoed on the audio feed and moved into the backyard. Military or federal had to be. Michael's mind raced, scenarios branching and collapsing. Were they here for him, an old ghost from his service, or were they here for them? He silenced the taser and turned to his prisoners. Their eyes were glued to the video wall, having seen the new arrivals. Who are they? Bruce whispered, genuine fear in his voice. Your reckoning, Michael said, though he wasn't sure himself. He made a snap decision, containment. He grabbed 2 cloth rags from the shelf. If you make a sound, what comes next will be far worse than zip ties. He gagged them both securely, then moved to the laptop. With a few keystrokes, he isolated the backyard audio. He heard the low murmur of a voice. Thermal shows 3 life signs in the basement, 2 clustered, 1 mobile. The 2 clustered are restrained. A second voice, female, responded. Grant service record confirms he's capable. Proceed to stage door, I'll take front. They knew who he was. They knew his record. This wasn't a random welfare check. Michael watched as one figure approached his back door. The man didn't try the handle. Instead, he placed a small, square device against the deadbolt. A green light flashed. A faint, electronic chirp sounded from Michael's own security panel, the sound of a digital lock being gracefully, legally overridden by a master keycode. Federal, definitely federal. The back door opened. The front door moments later did the same. They were inside. Michael closed the laptop, plunging the bunker into near darkness save for the glow of a single red utility light. He moved away from the bound men, melting into the deepest shadow of the room near the reinforced wall. His hand found the cool, familiar grip of a tool hanging there, a titanium Halligan bar, a breaching tool from his EOD kit. Not a firearm, but in close quarters, a definitive argument. Footsteps echoed upstairs, deliberate, searching. They cleared the living room, the study, the kitchen. They were methodical, quiet. They found the basement door. The handle turned, the door opened. Light from the hallway spilled down the stairs, framing a silhouetted figure. Female, compact, hands empty and visible at her sides. "Sergeant First Class Michael Grant," she said, her voice calm, clear, and carrying no trace of threat. "My name is Special Agent Mara Vance, FBI. My partner is Special Agent Davis. We are here regarding your guests, Warren Higgs and Bruce Kovac, and regarding the activities of the Cedar Ridge Homes Association." Michael didn't move from the shadows. "You have a warrant for my home." "We have a material witness warrant for Higgs and Kovac, and an exigent circumstances approval for entry based on intercepted communications regarding planned felony assault and interstate fraud." She took one step down, still keeping her hands visible. "We've been building a RICO case on their operation for 8 months. You just accelerated our timeline dramatically." The pieces locked into a new, unexpected configuration. They weren't the enemy. They were hunters on the same trail, but that didn't make them allies. "You let them walk in here," Michael said, the ice in his voice betraying his anger. "You had them under surveillance and you let them come to threaten me." "We needed an overt prosecutable act. Their pattern is coercion followed by fraudulent foreclosure. We needed them to cross a line with a witness who could withstand it." Agent Vance took another step down. "We didn't anticipate you would detain them or that you had this capability." On the floor, Higgs made a frantic, muffled sound against his gag. "He just confessed to conspiracy and fraud," Michael stated. "We heard," said the second agent, Davis, appearing at the top of the stairs. "We've been on your secure feed since we breached the perimeter. Impressive setup. The incapacitant was a nice touch, complicates things, but we can work with it." Michael finally stepped into the dim light, the Halligan bar held loosely, non-threateningly at his side. "What happens now?" "Now we take custody of Higgs and Kovac. You become a cooperating witness and victim. You hand over all your evidence, including tonight's recordings, and we dismantle this entire network." Agent Vance's eyes were sharp, assessing him. "You get your justice, Sergeant, the right way." "The right way? Paperwork, trials, delays, plea deals where the masterminds like Lisa Cho might walk." Before Michael could respond, a soft chime came from the laptop on the shelf. A notification. He glanced at it. A front gate camera alert. On the screen, a sleek sedan pulled up. A woman, Lisa Cho, stepped out, clutching a briefcase. She was early, and she was walking toward a house swarming with FBI agents she couldn't see. Agent Vance followed his gaze to the screen. Her professional calm tightened into urgency. "That's her. That's the treasurer." Cho paused at the front door, looking at the empty patrol cars now departing down the street. A calculated risk flashed across her face. She didn't knock. Instead, she turned and walked quickly toward the side of the house, toward the backyard gate, directly toward the path the agents had just taken. She was coming in, and she had the evidence. Michael looked at the agents, then at the bound HOA men, then back at the screen showing Cho's determined approach. The FBI's carefully orchestrated raid was about to collide with the HOA's corruption, right in his living room. "Your witness is here," Michael said, hefting the Halligan bar. "How do you want to play this?" The air in the bunker went from tense to electrically charged. On the video feed, Lisa Cho moved with a predator's caution, her eyes scanning the darkened backyard, the briefcase clutched like a life preserver. Agent Vance reacted instantly, her voice dropping to a tactical whisper. "Davis, intercept at the back door, non-confrontational. We need that case." She looked at Michael. "Sergeant, you are now a civilian witness. Stay here, stay quiet." But Michael was already moving toward the stairs, his mind operating on a different frequency. He'd seen the look in Cho's eyes, not just suspicion, but the cold calculation of a cornered animal. She wasn't walking into a trap, she was assessing one. "Agent," Michael said, his voice low but leaving no room for debate. "She's not coming to negotiate, she's coming to verify Higgs is neutralized. She sees your partner, she runs, or she destroys the evidence. That briefcase likely has a remote wipe or a dead man's switch." Vance paused, her training warring with the insight of a man who knew pressure points. Your suggestion. You let her come to me. Before Vance could protest, Michael was up the stairs, slipping past Agent Davis and into the shadowed kitchen. He moved to the sink, turned on the tap, and stood there, a picture of a man cleaning up after a struggle. The Halligan bar was out of sight beneath the edge of the counter. The back door opened softly. Lisa Cho stood silhouetted for a second, her sharp eyes taking in the kitchen, the empty hallway, and Michael at the sink. She didn't see Davis, concealed in the pantry alcove. Mr. Grant, she said, her voice smoother than Higgs's, more dangerous. Where's Warren? Basement, Michael said, not turning around, drying his hands on a towel. He and Bruce are having a timeout. You have the files. She stepped fully inside, closing the door but not latching it, an escape route left open. I do, but I need to see them first. I need assurances. Assurances? Michael finally turned, leaning against the counter, projecting weary annoyance. Your guys broke into my home, threatened me. My assurance is that I haven't called the police yet. Show me the files, prove this buyout is real, and you can take your thugs and get out. Cho's gaze darted around the room, lingering on a toppled chair from the earlier scuffle. Her hand tightened on the briefcase. It was a sleek hardshell model with a digital combo lock. Open it, Michael said. First I see Warren, a demand, not a request. Michael sighed as if dealing with a difficult child. Fine, this way. He led her not toward the basement utility door, but toward the hallway leading to the study and the vault, the original pretext for their visit. He needed her away from the exit, deeper into the house. He stopped at the vault door. He's in here, getting acquainted with my security system. Cho's brow furrowed. This didn't fit. Her free hand slipped into her jacket pocket. From the kitchen, Agent Davis gave a nearly imperceptible shake of his head. She's armed. Michael saw it too, the slight bulge in her pocket, a small pistol likely. Open the vault, Mr. Grant. Open the briefcase, Ms. Cho. A standoff, seconds ticked by, then Cho's phone buzzed in her pocket, a single insistent vibration, a warning, a signal. Her face hardened, the game was up. In one fluid motion, she dropped the briefcase and yanked the pistol from her pocket, not aiming at Michael, but at the briefcase itself. Dead man switch, Michael yelled, diving forward not at her but at the case. The gunshot was deafening in the confined hallway. But Cho hadn't fired at the case. She fired at the ceiling, a diversion. As Michael lunged, she kicked the briefcase skittering down the hall and bolted for the back door. Agent Davis emerged from the kitchen, his own service weapon drawn. FBI, freeze. Cho didn't freeze. She slammed through the back door into the night. Michael scooped up the briefcase. The digital lock was flashing red. A tiny countdown, 0005, 0004. Not a wipe, a charge. He threw it not out the door after Cho, but into the reinforced steel sink. He yelled down. He and Davis hit the kitchen floor. The explosion was contained but violent. A sharp, percussive crack followed by the sizzle of shredded electronics and the smell of burnt plastic and acid. The briefcase had been rigged to destroy its contents. Lisa Cho hadn't come to deal. She'd come to tie up loose ends and erase the trail. From the floor, Michael looked at Davis. Outside, tires squealed. Cho was getting away. But from the hallway, Agent Vance emerged, holding Cho, abandoned smartphone. She looked at the destroyed briefcase, then at the phone screen. She didn't get what she came for, Vance said, her voice grim. The detonation was premature. She was waiting for a confirmation signal from Higgs's phone, a signal we blocked. Vance turned the phone screen toward them. It showed a single unsent message draft. Asset secure, burn the files. But the files, Davis started. Are not in that case, Michael said, getting to his feet, looking toward the basement. Higgs talked. He gave me a cloud storage password. The real ledger is online. He looked from the destroyed briefcase to the fleeing Cho. She was running, but she was now a fugitive with no evidence, her accomplices in custody, and her entire scheme exposed. And she had just committed assault on a federal officer and attempted destruction of evidence in front of 2 witnesses. "The hunt is on," Agent Vance said, already speaking into her shoulder mic, putting out a bolo for Cho's vehicle. Michael walked to the shattered sink, picked up a fragment of the briefcase's lining. Burnt but not destroyed. A single half-charred page was fused to it. He peeled it back. It was a property transfer form, not for his house. It was for the entire Cedar Ridge HOA common land, signed by a judge, scheduled for approval in 3 days. Lisa Cho wasn't just stealing houses. She was stealing the whole neighborhood out from under them. The charred fragment of paper in Michael's hand wasn't just a property transfer. It was a blueprint for theft on a grand scale. The common land, the parks, the pools, the walking trails that made Cedar Ridge a community, was being sold off quietly to a shell company called Kellerman Properties. Judge Arthur Halstead's signature was a slashed line of black ink, a judicial rubber stamp on a multi-million-dollar heist. Agent Vance took the fragment, sealing it in an evidence bag. "Halstead, he's a family court judge, not property. This is way outside his purview." "It's a forgery," Agent Davis said, watching the forensics team now processing the kitchen. "Or he's compromised," Michael stated. The puzzle was expanding, getting uglier. "You said you had a RICO case. Does it include a judge?" Vance's silence was answer enough. "Our case was focused on Higgs, Cho, and the financial fraud. This is a new vector." From the basement, they heard muffled shouts. The incapacitant had worn off. Higgs and Bruce were awake, confused and terrified. "They're small fish," Michael said, his mind clicking through the implications. Cho was the brains, Higgs the face, Bruce the muscle, but a judge providing fraudulent orders, that's the silent partner. That's the one who makes the theft legal. He looked at the agents. "You have Cho's phone, you have Higgs and Bruce, you have my testimony and cloud data. You have everything you need to flip them to get them to give you the judge." Vance nodded. "It's the logical play, but it takes time. That transfer is scheduled in 3 days. If it goes through, the land is gone, and untangling it will take years in civil court. The homeowners will be crushed under legal fees." Michael walked to his study, to the vault. He didn't open it. Instead, he knelt beside it and pried up a section of the baseboard, revealing a small, fingerprint-locked safe within the safe. He opened it and pulled out a ruggedized tablet. "What's that?" Davis asked. "Insurance," Michael said, powering it on. "When I saw the pattern targeting veterans, I started my own investigation, not just on the HOA, on everyone they interacted with." He pulled up a file. "Judge Arthur Halstead, his wife is undergoing experimental cancer treatment, not covered by insurance. Cost, approximately $350,000. His savings were depleted 8 months ago." He looked up at the agents. "He didn't sign that order for power. He signed it for money. He's desperate, and desperate men are predictable." "We can't approach a judge without ironclad admissible evidence," Vance cautioned. "What you have is circumstantial, a motive and a signature. We need the transaction, the payment." Michael's tablet chimed. A message popped up on an encrypted channel. It was from a contact listed only as Wrench. "Wrench, heard your neighborhood got spicy. The Kellerman shell game is nested. Funds routed through 3 offshore layers, but the final beneficiary account is domestic. I found the pipe. Want me to trace it?" Michael typed back, "Do it, and prioritize any connections to Judge Arthur Halstead, Arizona." "Wrench, on it, stay frosty." "Who was that?" Vance asked, her tone making it clear this was her investigation. "A friend from my EOD days. He now does financial forensics for private clients." Michael met her gaze. "He's better than anyone at the Bureau, and he's not constrained by warrants." "You can't." "I already did," Michael cut her off. "The moment they mentioned my wife, this stopped being your case and started being my war. I'll give you everything we find, but I'm not waiting for the wheels of justice to grind. That land belongs to my neighbors, to a widow whose husband died in Kandahar, to a family with an autistic son who finds peace at that community pond. I won't let a corrupt judge steal it." The conviction in his voice filled the room. Vance exchanged a look with Davis. They were federal agents, bound by rules. But they were also looking at a man who had just been attacked in his home, a man with the skills and will to pursue an endgame they couldn't officially sanction. "You operate as a civilian," Vance said finally, her voice low. "You share every piece of information immediately. You do not engage, you do not confront. You are a source, not an operative. Is that clear?" "Clear," Michael said, but they all knew it was a fiction. The lines had been obliterated the moment the taser crackled in his hallway. Downstairs, Higgs began screaming, a raw sound of panic. "They'll kill us, you don't understand, it's not just the money." Michael and the agents sprinted back to the bunker. Higgs was pale, sweat-soaked, straining against his zip ties. Lisa was the operator, but she reports to someone else. A silent voice on the phone. "He's the one who got the judge. He's the one who said veterans were ideal soft targets. If we talk, he'll have us killed in custody." Bruce was nodding frantically, his eyes wild. "A name," Michael demanded. "We never got a name," Higgs cried. "Code name only. He called himself the trustee." On the tablet in Michael's hand, a new message flashed from Wrench. Wrench found the pipe. Final beneficiary is a trust called Aegis Holdings, registered in Delaware. Trustee is a lawyer named Martin Frey. Interesting side note, Frey's brother-in-law is the chief of police in the next county over. This is a protected species. Michael showed the screen to Vance. The color drained from her face. Martin Frey was a former state attorney general, a man with deep political connections and a reputation for ruthless efficiency. The HOA thugs, the corrupt treasurer, the compromised judge, they were all just layers. The real enemy, the trustee, was a legal shark with immunity armor. And in 72 hours, he was going to legally steal a neighborhood. Michael looked from the terrified HOA men to the grim federal agents, to the shattered remains of the briefcase. The battlefield was no longer his home. It was the system itself. The name Martin Frey hung in the bunker's stale air like a poison gas. Agent Vance immediately stepped outside, phone pressed to her ear, her voice a tense, low stream of professional jargon. This had just gone from a white-collar fraud case to a political grenade. Davis remained, watching Higgs and Bruce. Their earlier bluster was gone, replaced by the hollow-eyed terror of men who'd realized they were expendable pawns. Michael studied his tablet. Wrench had uploaded a cascade of data, shell company diagrams, encrypted email headers, and a timeline. Frey, Aegis Holdings was a vortex, sucking in distressed properties from manipulated HOAs across 3 states. Cedar Ridge was just the latest target. "He'll know we're compromised," Higgs whispered, staring at the floor. "He has people everywhere. The police call about the noise complaint. That was probably his guy reporting in. You think you're digging him out. He's already buried you." Before Michael could respond, his home phone rang, the landline, a number only a few people had. The caller ID was blocked. He picked it up. "Grant." "Sergeant Grant." The voice was polished, calm, and devoid of empathy. It was the voice of a man used to being obeyed. "I trust you've had an eventful evening. My associates are somewhat indiscreet." Michael said nothing. He nodded at Davis, who activated a trace. "I am what you would call the trustee. I manage assets. I resolve complications. You are a complication." There was a soft sigh, like a professor disappointed by a bright student. "You have skills, I respect that, but this is not a war zone. This is commerce, and you are damaging a delicate transaction." "You're stealing a community," Michael said, his voice flat. "I'm repurposing underutilized assets. Those common lands are a financial drain. The homeowners will be compensated with a modest settlement, and the land will be developed to its highest use. Everyone wins. Except the families you destroy to get it." "Sentimentality is a luxury," Frey replied, a hint of ice now glazing the words. Here is the new reality. You will cease your interference. You will persuade your federal friends to stand down. In return, I will ensure your property is purchased at a 20% premium above market. You walk away wealthy and unharmed. And if I do... The pause was long enough to hear the hum of the open line. Then I will demonstrate why my services are so valued. You have neighbors, the Ramirez family with their lovely daughter Sophia, the elderly Ms. Green who takes her walk at 7:15 a.m. precisely. They are not soldiers, Sergeant. They are soft targets, and their suffering will be on your conscience. The line went dead. Davis shook his head. Call was routed through a dozen international proxies, untraceable. Agent Vance re-entered, her face grim. I just got off the phone with the deputy director. Martin Frey is officially a person of interest in a broader investigation. We are to proceed with extreme caution. Translation: his political connections are screaming. Any move against him must be perfect, or it blows back on the Bureau. He just threatened my neighbors, Michael said. And we'll put a protective detail, Vance shot back, but the lack of conviction was clear. Resources were thin. Protection details required evidence of imminent specific threat. Frey's vague menace didn't qualify. Michael looked at the cloud data on his tablet. The property transfer was a legal steamroller. To stop it, they needed to prove fraud before it was finalized. They needed the judge to recant or the county clerk to reject the filing. And they had less than 3 days. We flipped the judge, Michael stated. Halstead, Vance scoffed. He's facing prison for bribery. He'll never talk. He'll lawyer up and hide behind the bench. Not if the alternative is worse, Michael said, opening a new file on his tablet. Wrench sent me Halstead's personal schedule. He has a standing lunch reservation tomorrow at 12:30 at the Grove, a quiet restaurant. He goes alone to read. It's his one moment of peace. You are not suggesting... I'm suggesting we give him a chance to be a hero, Michael interrupted. A chance to save himself by helping us nail the bigger fish. You can't approach him officially. His phone is tapped, his chambers watched. But a casual, private conversation, a proposition from someone who isn't FBI. Vance stared at him. It's a huge risk. If he alerts Frey, you're made, and Frey will own you. He already threatened to own me through my neighbors, Michael said, standing up. This is how we fight back, not with warrants but with leverage. His wife's treatment is at a facility called Hope Memorial. Frey's money is paying for it. What if I offer him a better deal? Witness protection, a clean slate, and a guarantee his wife's treatment continues, paid for by the state as part of his cooperation. It was a bold, almost reckless play, but it was the only play that moved faster than the clock. After a long moment, Agent Vance gave a slow, reluctant nod. We can't be there, we can't sanction it, but if you happen to be at the same restaurant and a conversation happens to occur, she left it hanging. We'll have a team doing long-range surveillance for your safety. That's all I can do. Michael understood. He was being cut loose as a deniable asset. He looked at the 2 bound men, the broken briefcase, the FBI agents in his home. His quiet retirement was ashes. The war had come home, not in the form of insurgents or IEDs, but in polo shirts and briefcases and the cold, legal theft of everything his neighbors had worked for. He had one shot. As he turned to prepare, his phone buzzed with a new alert, this time from his own security system. A motion sensor on the property line of old Ms. Green, 2 houses down. The time stamp, 7:18 p.m., 3 minutes after her evening walk should have ended. The feed showed a dark figure, face obscured, placing a large, ragged stone on her front porch. Tied to it was a single, stark note, clearly visible in the porch light. It read, Wilt. A threat, a warning, or a countdown. Frey wasn't waiting. The soft war had just begun. The word Wilt burned in Michael's mind. A threat to make an old woman wither. A message that the trustees' reach was intimate and cruel. It wasn't just a threat against Ms. Green. It was a preview of what would happen to every holdout in Cedar Ridge. There was no time for fear, only action. The next day at 12:28 p.m., Michael sat in a corner booth at the Grove, his back to the wall, facing the entrance. He wore civilian clothes, but his posture was a dead giveaway to anyone who knew the look, relaxed alertness. Judge Arthur Halstead entered precisely on time, a weary man carrying the weight of his wife's illness and his own corruption. He took his usual secluded table. Michael waited until the judge's order was taken. Then he moved, sliding into the chair opposite him before Halstead could open his book. "Judge Halstead, we need to talk about Martin Frey." The judge's face went ashen. "I have no idea what your wife's treatment at Hope Memorial, room 412, funded by wire transfers from the Aegis Holdings Trust, authorized by Frey." Michael placed his tablet on the table, screen down. "The FBI knows, I know. In 72 hours, that fraudulent land transfer you signed goes through and you become the fall guy. Frey will vanish and you'll spend the rest of your life in prison while your wife loses her care." Halstead's composure shattered. His hands trembled. "What do you want?" "A chance to be the man you used to be. You walk into the county clerk's office this afternoon and file an affidavit of duress. You state you were coerced by threats against your family into signing that order. You name Frey. You invalidate the transfer." "He'll destroy me." "He's already destroying you," Michael said, leaning in. "The FBI is ready to offer you and your wife full protection, witness relocation, and continued medical care in exchange for your sworn testimony and cooperation. Your alternative is to be the public face of this scandal. How long do you think a disgraced judge lasts in general population?" The judge stared at his folded napkin, his breath shallow. The moral math was brutal but clear. "How do I know the deal is real?" Michael nodded toward the restaurant's fireplace. A woman sitting nearby, Agent Vance in plain clothes, gave a subtle, confirming nod. "It's real," Michael said. "Your choice, be Frey's sacrifice or be the key that locks him away." Halstead closed his eyes. A single tear tracked through the wrinkles on his cheek. He nodded. "I'll do it." The trap was set. Halstead's affidavit was a seismic charge laid at the foundation of Frey's empire. But Michael knew a man like Frey wouldn't implode. He'd lash out. He was right. That evening, as Michael coordinated with Vance's team on the secure protective details for his neighbors, his security system screamed an alert. Every exterior camera flared white, then died, a coordinated EMP pulse. The house lights flickered and went out, total electronic blackout. They were here, not with legal threats, but with force. Michael moved in the darkness, muscle memory guiding him. He retrieved the Halligan bar from its spot and a compact, military-issue flashlight. He didn't head for the panic room. He headed for the offensive. He heard the rear door being breached, the splinter of wood. Two figures armed with compact submachine guns and night vision goggles swept into the kitchen. Professionals, Frey's private solution. What they didn't know was that Michael Grant's home wasn't just wired for security. It was engineered for defense. He flipped a manual hidden switch near the pantry. From slots in the ceiling, canisters dropped and burst, filling the kitchen not with gas but with a thick, non-toxic aerosolized powder, tactical obscurant. It rendered night vision useless, creating a blinding, swirling cloud. He heard their curses, their disoriented firing into walls. Michael didn't need sight. He knew the dimensions of his home like his own heartbeat. He moved through the cloud, a silent phantom. The first mercenary sensed a presence and turned. The titanium Halligan bar caught him in the temple with a sickening crack. He dropped. The second opened fire blindly. Michael was already low, sweeping the man's legs from behind. As he fell, Michael disarmed him with a vicious twist, pinning him with a knee to the spine. "How many?" Michael growled. "Just us cleanup crew," the man gasped. "Where is Frey?" "Waiting for the call that you were gone." Headlights suddenly flooded the living room windows, piercing the haze. Not FBI, a black Suburban with tinted windows. The engine idled. The front door opened. Martin Frey stood there, impeccably dressed, a look of mild distaste on his face as he surveyed the scene. His downed men, the cloud of powder, Michael standing over them. "I see I underestimated the cost of doing business," Frey said, his voice calm. He held a phone. "The affidavit is inconvenient, but judges can be replaced. The land transfer is delayed, not stopped. You've merely made this more expensive." "It's over, Frey," Michael said. "For you it is." Frey raised his phone. "I have a man on a ridge 500 yards away with a rifle aimed at your chest. You are a tragic final casualty of your own instability, a veteran who snapped, killed intruders, then turned the gun on himself. The FBI will find your cloud data conveniently deleted. My narrative will stand." He was right. Michael could feel the laser sight's pinprick of heat on his sternum through his shirt. But Michael smiled, a cold, sure smile. "You talk too much, Trusty, you always have." He tapped his own ear. "Did you get all that, Agent Vance?" Frey's smugness faltered. From his phone, Agent Vance's voice echoed, amplified. "We got it all, Martin. Solicitation of murder, conspiracy, racketeering, and we've just arrested your sniper. The Ridge was the first place Sergeant Grant suggested we look." All around the property, FBI SUVs erupted from hiding places, their lights cutting the night. Agents swarmed, weapons trained on Frey. He dropped the phone, his face a mask of stunned disbelief. His legal armor meant nothing against the direct evidence of a murder plot, recorded and witnessed. As agents took Frey into custody, Agent Vance approached Michael. "Halstead's affidavit filed. The transfer is frozen. Frey's financial network is being seized as we speak. It's done." Michael looked past her to his neighbors' houses, their lights now coming back on. Ms. Green's porch was empty. The stone had been removed. The Ramirez family's daughter, Sophia, waved nervously from a window. They were safe. The war was over. 1 month later, the Cedar Ridge Common Land was officially placed into a protected trust, owned by the homeowners themselves. The HOA was disbanded and reformed with strict oversight, led by Ms. Green and Mr. Ramirez. Warren Higgs and Bruce Kovac, in exchange for testimony, faced lengthy but reduced sentences. Lisa Cho was apprehended trying to cross into Mexico. Judge Halstead and his wife entered witness protection, her treatment ongoing. Martin Frey awaited trial in a federal detention center. His empire of paper and threats collapsed into dust. Michael stood on his porch at dusk, his leg barely aching. The neighborhood was quiet, the only sound the laughter of children riding bikes down the street, a sound that had been absent for years. Agent Vance had offered him a consultant role. He declined, but he'd given his number to a network of veteran advocates. His phone buzzed, a text from an unknown number from a state he'd never visited. "Heard what you did in Arizona. Our HOA president just demanded the code to my gun safe. Says it's a violation. He has no idea I was 82nd Airborne. What should I do?" Michael typed back, a faint smile on his lips. "Document everything, then call me. Some wars never really end. They just change terrain, and there were still plenty of good soldiers who remembered how to fight. What would you do if the people meant to protect your community became the biggest threat? Could you stay calm? Could you fight back? If you faced HOA thugs demanding your safe code, would you have a plan? Let me know your state in the comments below. And if you believe in standing your ground, subscribe and hit that notification bell. Because the next story of an everyday hero fighting back against corruption is already on the way. This is HOA Confessionals. We protect our own.